Hi, folks. If there's no good reason to be sitting in the back, we encourage people to come and sit closer to us. I know that there's some people getting translation, so there is good reason for some people, but please. Well, thank you all for coming and for taking the time. I also want to thank our hosts and organizers, including the UNDP and IDLO teams, and other partners in the global multi-stakeholder working group on customary and formal justice and SDG 16 plus that helped put together this specific panel and the event in general. I'm Siavash Robari. I'm the country manager for IDLO in the Philippines. And I'm excited to be here and talk about this topic because what we refer to as diverse pathways to justice in many ways represents both the historical foundation of people-centered justice and also its future. As states continue to wake up to its potential and develop new ways to leverage technology, data, and policy to take advantage of these diverse pathways. Today, we have an amazing panel to help us think through what the current state of this development is and what it might look like in the short and medium term as we grapple with significant changes that are happening in our world. With us today is Attorney Shah Elijah Dumama Alba. She's the Minister of Interior and Local Government and Member of Parliament of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Dr. Alfonso Lopez, Prosecutor General of Timor-Leste. Dr. Rebecca Monson, Professor of the Australian National University of College of Law. Mr. Ukrit Sornporn, Chief of Policy and External Affairs for Rule of Law and Criminal Justice at the Thailand Institute of Justice, and Ms. Preeti Thapa, the Asia Foundation's Deputy Country Representative in Nepal. We will do 2 rounds of prompts, though after the first round, maybe we can just stop and see if anybody has any questions and get a discussion going. And if there aren't any questions, then I'll just move on to the prompts. But we'll do 2 prompts of questions and then responses, and then after that, we'll see if there's any bigger questions from y'all, and we'll take it by ear if everyone's okay with that. Yeah, see everybody nodding, great. Let me start with our first panelist, Attorney Lai. Let me introduce her for you. Attorney Shah Elijah Dumama Alba is a member, as I just said, of the Parliament of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority and was elected its floor leader. She's also the Minister of Interior and Local Government in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. She previously served as the region's first Attorney General and co-head of the Joint Secretariat of the Intergovernmental Relations Body, a mechanism for cooperation and coordination between the national government of the Philippines and the Bangsamoro government. She is both a member of the regular Philippine Bar and the special Philippine Sharia Bar. She holds a master's degree in public management focused on local governance from the Development Academy of the Philippines. She believes that autonomy can only be achieved through strong political will and good governance. She is passionate about making people believe in a functional, accessible, and dependable justice system. Attorney Lai, when you served as Attorney General of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, you oversaw a complex and evolving justice system that includes state, Islamic, local, and indigenous elements. Can you tell us how the Bangsamoro justice system promotes interface and coherence, as well as manages and mitigates tensions between diverse justice actors and practices and formal institutions?
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and I will be referring to the Bangsamoro numerous repeatedly in this presentation. The Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is a relatively new political entity established by law in 2019 and is a product of a peace process between the government of the Philippines and a revolutionary group called the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Under the Bangsamoro Organic Law that created the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, the Bangsamoro government administers the region whose inhabitants are predominantly Muslims, but we also have indigenous peoples and Christian settlers. So the heterogeneous composition of the residents in the region is a mix of social and cultural characteristics with different sets of laws and legal traditions. In the Bangsamoro, we have what we call the Bangsamoro Tri-Justice System Legal Framework that deals with the different pertinent laws, rules, and regulations, as well as obligations and rights that of all the residents and stakeholders of the autonomous region within a judicial environment in such a way that their legal needs and aspirations are adequately addressed, resolved, and effectively operationalized. So as residents of the Bangsamoro, every citizen, whether he or she be a Muslim, Christian settler, indigenous communities, even the civil society organizations and non-government organizations, of course, have the right to be heard. And expectedly, the Bangsamoro government, including the Bangsamoro Parliament, are obliged to respond to the identified legal needs of these people. And in the process, while the Bangsamoro government and the Parliament are duty-bound to enact laws and promulgate rules and regulations, administer, implement laws, so are the citizens. They are also duty-bound to comply with them. So the starting point is to circumscribe the objective, the operationalization of these obligations and rights in the tri-justice system legal framework within the existing laws and regulations that apply to the autonomous region and the residents. So during the development of this tri-justice legal framework, we have the Bangsamoro government and the different offices under it that see to it that these laws and regulations are responsive to the needs for justice and peace and order by the residents of the region. So we also ensure that if there are areas or cases where there is an inadequacy of the law, the government is quick to fill in these legal loopholes so that the vacuum in the law does not persist and so that the rights of the people are protected. This is done by enacting laws and formulating policies and rules and regulations that expand the spirit and the rationale of the tri-justice system legal framework, but it should be still within the bounds and limits and parameters of the laws. We are restricted by the Constitution, and there's also a Bangsamoro Organic Law, but we make sure that we work around available laws and legal parameters that we have. So viewed in this way, all the existing laws and rules and regulations, as well as those that are still to be enacted and established, enjoy the assured support of residents and stakeholders while the tri-justice legal framework is still being enhanced. Effective legal systems that start at the grassroots level are the fundamental pillars of democratic governance and social solidarity. So they are the first line of defense against injustices and inequalities and social discord by providing an avenue for dispute resolution and upholding the rights of individuals within the communities. In the context of the Bangsamoro, where this is post-conflict, a post-conflict setting where the historical and cultural complexities intersect with complex legal frameworks, the tri-justice system promotes accountability and social cohesion by promoting the accessible, localized mechanisms for legal recourse to members of the community for redress for grievances, and by decentralizing the legal processes and empowering our local authorities and local communities, the Bangsamoro government ensures and assures that justice is not just accessible, but it is also culturally sensitive and responsive to the needs of the diverse communities. We are able to foster trust in institutions, we strengthen social cohesion and promote the rule of law from the ground up. No? Well, finally, by alleviating the burdens of higher courts and formal justice systems, customary and informal justice systems contribute to the effectiveness and efficiency of the overall legal infrastructure.
Thank you very much. It is such a complex system that it meets the needs of such a complex environment. So I think it'd be really interesting to dive into that a little bit deeper in a little bit. Our next speaker is Dr. Alfonso Lopez. Dr. Lopez has been serving as the Prosecutor General of Timor-Leste since April 2021. He completed his law degree at Atmajaya Catholic University in Yogyakarta, Indonesia in 1999. Throughout his career, he has held key positions in Timor-Leste's legal system, including Deputy Prosecutor General, Prosecutor for the districts of Dili, Bacau, and Oecus, and roles within the Ministry of Justice. His extensive experience in public prosecution and commitment to the rule of law have been instrumental in his leadership of the Prosecutor General's Office, contributing significantly to the legal and judicial development of Timor-Leste. He believes that people should have the courage to trust legal institutions and report violations, so the institutions can support bringing justice for all. Dr. Lopez, please. Timor-Leste has incorporated the customary mediation practices within the formal justice system. From the perspective of the country's top prosecutors, what is the value of this mediation network? How does it interact with and complement the formal justice system?
A very good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Prosecutor General Office of Republic of Timor-Leste, I would like to thank the UNDP on UN Women for inviting us in here in Bangkok. I will be presenting in Portuguese as the official language of Timor-Leste.
Dr. Lopez, can you give us 2 minutes? I think people will need to put on the headset. Just give us 1 minute for us slackers. Yes, please. Actually, I don't even know how to make this work, so. The button's right here. Can we get the channel? The English channel?
Channel 1.
Channel 1? Channel 1, everyone.
Okay. Bismillah. Começaria por dizer que em Timor-Leste, costume é fonte de direito, ainda que limitado, uma vez que só abrange as normas e usos que não contrariam a Constituição e a legislação que especificamente trata de direito costumeiro. Logo, constitucionalmente inválido, o costume contra a lei. Ainda não existe legislação específica que define de forma legal, e abstrata as condições em que os usos e costumes são entendíveis. Igualmente, não existe uma rede nacional estruturada e organizada de mediação, enquanto forma alternativa de resolução de conflitos e de mediadores. No entanto, existe no Ministério da Justiça um projeto de lei sobre a justiça tradicional, que no seu relatório se diz que, citamos, estudos realizados sobre o acesso à justiça em Timor-Leste demonstram que a justiça tradicional continua a representar o meio de resolução de litígio por excelência no país. E que pedimos venha para novamente citar, de acordo com uma sondagem realizada pela Asian Foundation, em 2013, cerca de 93% de cidadãos sentem-se mais confortáveis com a administração da justiça por mecanismos tradicionais. Nesse sentido, não conhecendo outros estudos mais recentes realizados sobre a matéria, face à importância que a população timorense confere aos mecanismos tradicionais de resolução de conflitos, não se pode deixar concordar com o que se diz no relatório referido, projeto de lei sobre a justiça tradicional, de que o legislador ordinário timorense não deve ignorar essa realidade. Não obstante a existência de um quadro legal regulador sobre o reconhecimento da justiça tradicional e informal sobre a forma como o sistema tradicional ou comunitário de resolução de conflitos se deve articular com o sistema formal ou estadual de justiça. Ainda assim, encontramos no ordenamento jurídico timorense soluções que reconhecem e valorizam a justiça tradicional e fazem ou permitem fazer a ligação com a justiça estadual e formal designadamente. Primeiro, a nível de liderança comunitária, ao atribuir-se ao chefe de suco, conselho de suco e chefe de aldeia a responsabilidade de desenvolver atividades que visam garantir a paz e a harmonia social, favorecer a resolução de pequenos conflitos e promover mecanismos de prevenção de violência doméstica, de proteção de vítima, punição de agressores, de modo a eliminar a ocorrência de tais casos na comunidade. Os conflitos resolvidos pela justiça comunitária informal através da liderança comunitárias, designadamente a reconciliação entre a vítima e o agente, pode ser reconhecida pela justiça estadual e formal penal quando no Código Penal, artigo 55, número 2, a linha G, se prevê como circunstância atenuante geral a reconciliação entre vítima e o agente. B. O mesmo se pode dizer das reparações ou compensações arbitradas às vítimas através de instâncias e mecanismos tradicionais de resolução de conflitos, quando no artigo 104 do Código Penal, no arbitramento de indenização civil por perdas e danos emergentes de crimes, é permitido aos tribunais estaduais reconhecerem a reparação ou compensação arbitrada às vítimas através de instâncias e mecanismos tradicionais de resolução de conflitos, nomeadamente através de mediação realizada pelas respectivas lideranças comunitárias. E também é possível, perante a Justiça Estadual, invocar o direito constitucional ou local para resolução de litígio, artigo 516 do Código de Processo Civil. Mas, nesse caso, competirá a parte que o invocar fazer a prova de existência desse direito, sem prejuízo de, oficiosamente, o tribunal estar incumbido de conhecer o direito costumeiro ou local invocado pelas partes em litígio. Segundo, resolução extrajudicial de disputas sobre reconhecimento e atribuição de direito de propriedade e bens imóveis, através de mediação realizada pela Comissão de Terras e Propriedades, CTP. As decisões administrativas proferidas pela CTP só produzem efeitos após 60 dias, sendo este o prazo para o litigante, que se considerar lesado, impugnar judicial a decisão. B. A decisão da CTP que atribua título de propriedade sobre um bem imóvel confere ao seu titular o direito de atuar como proprietário deste. Terceiro, resolução extrajudicial de litígios através da mediação realizada pela Defensoria Pública, podendo, para o efeito, utilizar regras de direito costumeiro. Os documentos produzidos pela Defensoria Pública na resolução de litígios através da mediação são considerados pelo Código de Processo Civil título executivo nos termos do artigo 669, número 1, a linha C. B, portanto, esses documentos podem servir de base para que as partes em litígio possam obter junto do Tribunal Estadual competente a execução da decisão proferida. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for explaining basically that while there is a need for a comprehensive law, the justice system is able still to use these traditional and customary systems to be able to meet the needs of the public. Our next speaker is Dr. Rebecca Monson, who's a professor at the Australian National University School of Law, where she leads research and teaching on law, governance, and development. Her book, Gender, Property, and Politics in the Pacific, Who Speaks for Land, is based on almost 20 years of research on gender, legal pluralism, and rule of law projects in the Pacific region, and won the 2023 Australian Legal Research Awards Book Prize. Other work includes some of the earliest detailed empirical studies of climate-induced relocation in the Pacific, and a major study of legal pluralism and access to justice in the Solomon Islands. These works contributed to major legal and policy reforms, including the Solomon Islands' first climate relocation guidelines. Dr. Monson is currently working on a project funded by the Australian Research Council, examining the ways in which Pacific peoples' movements navigate plural justice systems to combat environmental dispossession, achieve progressive social change, and advance more secure environmental future. Dr. Monson, given your broad experience and expertise on customary and informal justice in the Pacific, can you share some examples of entry points, incentive structures, and windows of opportunity that have promoted greater inclusiveness, responsiveness, accountability, and respect for basic rights within the diverse justice systems in the region? Thank you. Thank you.
Is that on? I want to start by acknowledging that I'm a white Australian and I'm speaking about justice systems in the Pacific, which are inherently a matter of Indigenous sovereignty. And my own nation has significant unfinished business when it comes to recognising the justice systems of the rightful custodians of the lands and waters now known as Australia. So I'm going to focus my comments on three sources of entry points. I want to focus on norms, institutions, and civil society. And I'm focusing mostly on post-conflict Solomon Islands, which, as in the other examples discussed, is very culturally and linguistically diverse. And here, customary law is recognised as a general source of law under the Constitution. So first, norms, they're a really important entry point, but there's a persistent tendency to treat customary and informal justice systems as a kind of black box that we don't want to look inside. So we know they're there, we know that the vast majority of disputes are resolved in these domains, but our attention tends to focus on the institutions, the outer boundaries of these boxes. So for example, chiefs and customary courts, rather than the norms that also make up these systems. Now, there's some really good reasons for this lack of engagement, including the long history of colonial efforts to codify custom, which inevitably entrenched particular versions and often concentrated power in the hands of the few. But we can't undertake evidence-based work today if we don't have some understanding of the norms that make up customary and informal justice. So I'll give you two examples that I'm familiar with. In central Morovo Lagoon in Solomon Islands, people often refer to two forms of taro cultivation which have declined since colonisation. So one of these was ruta, and these were formed by the diversion of streams primarily by men, and they were cultivated primarily by women. They were strongly associated with women's gendered power, but as I said, they've declined. And some people today are trying to reinvigorate this form of taro cultivation as a means to also reinvigorate women's authority and power. In this instance, outside intervention would probably be unnecessary and potentially even harmful, but we do need to know about these norms and practices in order to avoid compromising them. Also in central Morovo and in some other parts of the Western Solomon Islands, there's a concept I've written about called vulu vulu. Now, this concept has been documented by anthropologists as meaning the matrilineal blood core of the tribe. But local people also emphasise that it refers to a powerful individual woman. They'll compare it to the men Bangara, who are now known as chiefs. So here I would suggest we need to acknowledge this form of gendered authority, and at the very least it teaches us that we should desist from statements like women cannot be chiefs in Solomon Islands. It's a statement that's not only empirically untrue, but it quite literally reproduces the more exclusionary interpretations of customary norms. So we literally reproduce this statement that women cannot have this form of authority. So this brings me to institutions and the need for ongoing monitoring and evaluation. We heard this referred to a few times in the sessions yesterday. This is often the space in which outside interveners have been the most confident acting, and they continue to be. So a classic case, as I mentioned, is indirect rule and the recognition of chiefs. Solomon Islands is home to a long-term project that's often been cited as an example of good practice. So it started with Justice Delivered Locally, which was primarily a research project led by the World Bank's Justice for the Poor program and the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs in the Solomons. That led to an ongoing community governance and grievance management project. The research behind it involved meetings and interviews with more than 1,500 people across much of Solomon Islands. Exploring what kinds of disputes were arising at the local level and how people were resolving them. So the community governance project that's ongoing has a really robust evidence base behind it. It involves the appointment of community officers by the communities themselves, and those officers operate as a vital connecting point between communities, provincial and national authorities. It has been enormously successful in resolving and managing disputes and generally strengthening the relationships between communities and the various levels of government. But there are also now stories emerging of a proliferation of community bylaws across the country that entrench things like curfews and dress codes primarily against women and youth. While there are numerous community officers who are women, there was a reluctance in the early stages of the project to include a quota. And I suggest that this flags the need for ongoing monitoring of our interventions of customary and informal justice systems, even those that are regarded as sort of best practice. And this brings me to my third and final point. We may need to weigh up the costs and benefits of stabilisation as compared to transformation. And perhaps the most ethical, effective way to do this is by collaborating with civil society movements. So there's a large body of literature on the 1998 to 2003 conflict in the Solomons that consistently notes that women's movements played a major role in building peace. There's also a large body of work that notes that these movements were subsequently sidelined by international interveners. We need to learn from these mistakes, but we consistently fail to do so. Women were again at the forefront of peace-building movements during the deadly riots at the end of 2021, but yet again they were sidelined by the securitized response. One of the most exciting movements currently emerging in the region, which was noted several times yesterday, is the youth-led movements for climate action. Pacific Island students fighting climate change emerged at the University of the South Pacific in Vanuatu, and they've driven the global campaign for an advisory opinion on climate justice from the ICJ. What is less well known about this movement is how they're organising themselves to contest not only the political and economic colonisation they see themselves as experiencing, but also epistemological. So, for example, they've kept the arts, Indigenous custom and spirituality absolutely central to their advocacy. They've also quietly contested predominant ideas of gender, race and belonging in the region. So, for example, many of their most prominent leaders are Melanesian women and are from Chinese and Indian diasporas. So I think we should certainly celebrate movements like Women Peace Builders and student climate advocates, but we also need to be paying attention to how exactly they mobilise to navigate and contest multiple justice systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Monson, for bringing attention to also the potential pitfalls when doing this kind of work, and the fact that everyone has to pay careful attention when engaging in these processes so we don't do more harm than we intend to. Our next panelist is Mr. Ukrit Swampram. Mr. Swampram is the Chief of Policy and External Affairs on the Rule of Law and Criminal Justice at the Thailand Institute of Justice, affiliated with the United Nations. His expertise spans the rule of law, restorative justice, and justice reform. He oversees policy advocacy and capacity building programs, including restorative justice in schools, the RJ Journey board game, which he explained to me earlier, it's fascinating, and the RJ database for practitioners. Additionally, Mr. Sonprom is an arbitrator and co-founder of the Construction Lawyers Society in Thailand. He also teaches at Thammasat University and Chulalongkorn University and actively represents the TIJ and the Thai government in UN and ASEAN forums. He has previously held various roles within the TIJ and Thailand's Ministry of Justice, including legal officer, researcher, and program manager. He holds an LLM in public international law from the University of Aberdeen in the UK and is pursuing an LLD at Thammasat University. Mr. Sonprom, can you, TIJ has pioneered an interesting approach to making justice in a very particular institutions, in this case, the school system. Can you tell us about that initiative and what lessons we might take from it? Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished participants. Thank you very much, Thea, for your question. The Thailand Institute of Justice, or TIJ, has undertaken an informal, transformative approach to making justice better and accessible in line with the UN Basic Principle on the use of restorative justice in criminal matters. So this is the basic mandates that we get from the UN ODC and the CCPCJ, or the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice at the UN forums. So these two main areas focus on the use of RJ for practitioners. And another area is the use of restorative justice in school system, which is more of a prevention measure. So our project, Restorative Justice in Schools, focus on addressing conflict and harmful behavior by implementing restorative practice rather than relying on solely the punitive measures in school system. So if you imagine the school system, especially in the developing country like Thailand, most of the school in Thailand, they still use like corporal punishment for students, improportionate penalty for the student who have to be in the discipline process, and the discipline teachers doesn't understand something like restorative justice. So they try to duplicate the justice system outside in school. So this is not what we are going to appreciate. So we try to change this, right? Our approach aims to create a culture where dialogue, empathy, and mutual understanding from the basis of conflict resolutions. Okay. The core objective is to help students understand what they do, understand what is the behavior that is acceptable by the society, and try to make them learn from their own behaviors, change their mindset, change their behavior. That include the role of their parents as well, the role of indirect victims, the role of indirect offenders in the incident as well. So everyone who are stakeholders in the incident have to participate in the process, so that they learn how to initiate the process together and how to reach the outcome together. Because using the discipline alone may not help them in order to change their behavior or mindset, and also cannot reach the outcome that is wanted by both the victims and the offender. We don't want our children to be dropped out from school. We try to let them grow up in an appropriate way that the society wants them to do so, and especially in accordance with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Right. So the initiative draw the international best practice in restorative justice with influences from models used in New Zealand, Canada, and some countries in European Union. The restorative justice in school has significantly reduced school violence. As I experienced with many schools that participate in our project, they tend to have innovations in how to change the behavior of the student and reduce the violence against children in school system. I mean the violence that is committed by the teachers themselves, by the structure of the school themselves, and by the procedure themselves. So that's the secondary victimization against children. I mean, in a, in a in the school system that we have quite a heavy power from the teachers, from the headmaster, from the probably the association of the parents. It's quite hard in most of the Thai schools in order to empower the children who are victims of crime, victims of bullying, victims of sex offenses or sexual harassment. So we try to use this method in order to let the offender understand what happens and make them feel remorseful and suggest what they will do in order to compensate or in order to heal the victim of the incident, right? So our crucial lesson we have learned is that the restorative justice must be rooted in the broader school culture, not only in a discipline room or not only in the like the president of the class. We have to do the strengthening of the school system, the infrastructure, the things that is the crucial points in order to change the culture of the school is the non-violent communications, not only the verbal communication, but also the action that they do against our children as well, right? So by doing so, we aim to break the cycle of violence and build more inclusive and supportive system that the child have their voice here or heard, right? In summary, our work has reflected when students are allowed to participate in the constructive program that endorse the restorative justice principles, they have like a good grade. They have like some satisfaction rate increase in solving the problem that they get, and then they have better understanding about how the society agrees what action is, what action can do, what action you cannot do, something like that. So this is the way that the restorative justice principles is translated from the UN level to the national level in Thailand and try to let them be one of the preventive measures in our school system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a fascinating intervention, and I just have to say, like, that is building societies from the ground up, and that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Our last panelist, but not least, is Ms. Preeti Thapa, who is the Asia Foundation's Deputy Country Representative in Nepal, and she has over 30 years of experience in law, human rights, gender, peace building, and governance. She is a skilled peace builder, lawyer, and mediator. She oversees the Foundation's operations and programs in Nepal, focusing on program development, grant management, and financial oversight. Her work emphasizes improving access to justice, promoting community mediation, and facilitating dialogues among diverse stakeholders. Preeti has been instrumental in Nepal's transition to a federal system and has engaged with high-level stakeholders to strengthen governance and judicial capabilities. She has played a key role in supporting significant legal reforms, including the Mediation Act. In addition to her role at the Asia Foundation, Preeti is an active member of the Nepal Bar Association, has taught at various institutions, and serves as the chairperson for the Unyoke Foundation, which connects peace practitioners globally. She holds a master's degree in law from the University of New Hampshire School of Law. Welcome. Ms. Thapa, for more than 20 years, the Asia Foundation's community mediation program in Nepal has offered an alternative way for communities to de-escalate conflicts related to land, business, family quarrels, and other matters. Can you tell us about this program, in particular how it has contributed to empowering the most marginalized and excluded Nepalis? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for IDLO for this opportunity to share the transformative experience and story of community mediation in Nepal. Nepal is a very multi-ethnic, multilingual country. We have more than 100 ethnic groups and more than 90 languages. And all the ethnic group, like most of the ethnic group, they have their own traditional systems of conflict resolution. but not necessarily mediation. It's more like arbitration and even adjudication. And these traditional systems are based on patriarchal values, colored by caste, class, gender divides. And with urbanization and migration in Nepal, most of the traditional systems are now disintegrating because the traditional systems are very homogeneous. And as communities started becoming heterogeneous, it, like many people, they are not like really going to these systems. And it has its own biases, and it is disproportionately favors male and powerful, and that will really marginalize the minority and ethnic community. So, and then Nepal, we have this culture of going to the third party. And this can be traced as far as our religious scriptures. So there is a tradition of going to third party, but access to justice or access to formal justice system is very difficult, especially for rural and the marginalized community. So in 2001, Asia Foundation started working on community mediation as access to justice program. And with like few years of practicing, we felt that it is not only resolving disputes, it is also like creating a culture of conflict resolution and transforming people's personal life. It's building relationship, transforming structures and cultures. In this 20 years of community mediation work, we have trained more than 12,000 mediators. And then we have worked on more than 690 mediation centers. These 12,000 mediators have taken cases more than 61,000. And the mediation composition, like if you look at 12,000 mediators, we really worked hard to make it very inclusive. So when we went to communities to select mediators, mediators are from the community and they are volunteers. We asked the community people like who can be the mediators, and at that time special emphasis was given that it has to mirror the composition of the community so that they have ownership, they have trust. And right now we have like around 40% women mediators and 45% from indigenous and minority communities. And we also have now network of 10,000 community mediators. So community mediation has worked to shift these social norms, promoting empowerment and social inclusion, especially like in the traditional system, only males and powerful people, village heads, they used to be the third party facilitators. Now people are seeing their own people as mediators. Initially, it was very difficult to convince even women to come and work as mediators because they had never seen women mediating cases. But with lots of mentoring and help coaching them, giving them specialized training, we were able to get first batch of mediators. And at that time, we had around 20-25% women. But these mediators, when they start going to the community and working as mediators, they have become now role models. And in the next batch of training, many women, many girls, they came and said, we want to be the mediators, because they have seen that this has transformed the personal side of the mediators and minority communities. They were more confident, they had more self-esteem, and people were trusting and recognizing and going to take the mediation service. Instead of like really tolerating the harms, the dispute, they started addressing it. And even like the disputants, earlier many women did not go to the formal justice system because of different barriers, but now they were more willing to come and bring their case towards mediators, because they felt that they are our community people, they will understand us. So even there was an increase of to take the service of mediation. And mediation is such a process, safe process, like where they can come and talk about their own needs, feelings, emotion, their pain, and the other side would understand. And like when they understand each other, they come up with the like best option that fulfill their interest and come up with a decision, because it is their own like promise, it gets implemented. Whereas in the formal system, it takes forever to get the judgment to execute. So that was why more and more people were taking this service, and it was very empowering for the community also to have a say, to have a sense that their voices are heard and they can make a decision. The other thing was it really helped to develop the leadership quality of this women and marginalized community. They started participating in community social work and in other things, and then they also was started actively participating in political side of things. And then in 2017, we had a local election after 20 years, because Nepal was in conflict and we didn't had local elections. And then 154 mediators, they got the ticket to run the election. And out of that, 62 got elected. And among the 62, 41% were women and 76% were from indigenous or marginalized community. So that was one thing. The other thing was, as Rebecca was telling, like in Nepal, there's this tendency that if we are doing new, we tend to bring consultant, and they would write manuals and they will write guidelines and we follow. And initially when we started this process, we did the same. But with 2-3 years of practice, we realized that somewhat people are not doing as they were trained, and especially like there was this concept of neutrality. But in a community, that concept did not resonate well. And then people were saying that, no, we are not able to do it, and we are such a like advice-seeking culture. People ask what we can do. So instead of neutrality, we started saying more like impartiality. And they are inside neutrals. So how do you encourage them to work like that? And how do they address power imbalance? Because there was so much power imbalance, and like mediator being just neutral won't do justice. And that was not, so we started adapting to the learnings that we had. And the community mediators, the community trainers, now they did action research for 18 months, and they were the one who designed or revised the curriculum. So now our curriculum is practice-based. It is all from the learnings of practice and from the practitioners. And we also design multi-stakeholder mediation, and that was also through 18 months of action research. So this is how like community mediation has been able to transform life and has transformation in Nepal.
Thank you so much, Priti. For me, the idea that you can do something for 20 years is so luxurious and amazing as a practitioner, and that must feel so, I don't know, so rewarding to be able to do that and see the people who started that now become the experts who are able to write these, the manuals. That's amazing.
One thing that I just want to add is, like when this initiative was started, it started as a civil society-led effort, but we constantly work with a formal legal system, with the Supreme Court, with the judiciary, and now we have community mediation and the Mediation Act that talks about court, community, and commercial mediation. And in 2015, when we had our new constitution, it is like Constitution has said that it has devolved the judicial power to the local government together with legislative and executive. Now, in each and every ward, we have to have mediation centers. So it is completely institutionalized, and it is a bottom-up approach. And through the evidence and practice, we were able to advocate and have the policy change.
That's so fascinating. And I've got personally a lot of questions. So we've got another set of prompts that we can go through. But I kind of want to take a break and see if there's other questions people have that are outside the circle. Please. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for these fantastic presentations and these fascinating cases. My question is on how do these mediation and customary justice systems reconcile with the rights of displaced persons to restitution and the rights of victims to reparation and to a remedy? Because I think on one side it can it can help in a way, having some disputes disappeared through a reconciliation, but in other cases it may actually do the opposite, no? And when there's a great power imbalance, have the effect of making a claim disappear, but without providing justice, no? So I know the cases are very complex. The case I look at is mostly Myanmar, where at the moment it's basically a non-rule of law system where community-based dispute resolution is just a little window of hope in limited cases, no? But that's my question. And the other question, if you have time, and that's for Preti, it's how do you see the relation between the making of the federal state and this type of community-based dispute resolution? Was there any difference between states, or if you can reflect on that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I get you to introduce yourself for our...
Sorry, I'm Jose Arraiza, and I'm working for UNDP in Myanmar.
Perfect. I know there's a thing in these events where people ask a bunch of questions and then there's, people trying to answer them. I don't like that. So I'm just going to have people answer whoever wants to volunteer on this one. I'm happy to hear from everybody, but also whoever wants to go first. Any volunteers? Yes, please, Preeti.
So this kind of case, we have handled these kind of disputes, and it has a different approach. We have trained mediators on multi-stakeholder process, which is more like a dialogue process. So it's a dialogue and mediation. So in Nepal, we have lots of issues like this. I just want to give one example. There's an indigenous community called Tharu. And in the western side of Nepal, the hilly people migrated and they took their land and they become landless. So they worked as a bonded laborers to landlords. And in 2001, Nepal freed bonded laborers and they promised to give them land to resettle. And they did give, but there were lots of dispute because the people from Kathmandu, like looking at the map from there, they allocated lands. But in reality, when they got the land certificate, when they went to their land, that land was already occupied by the homeless. And these two were also from the same indigenous community. And because of historical marginalization and discrimination, there were lots of Tharus without land and they had no place to go. So they were occupying land in the forest. And when they got the certificate, other Tharus got the same land. So there was dispute between both the people and both were marginalized. And they got all legal, they went to court, they went to administrative department, quasi-judicial bodies, but because it was so complex, they were not able to resolve for many years. And this case came to mediation, multi-stakeholder mediation, or a dialogue forum. And so this, because of the process, they were able to analyze the case, bring the people together. They had multiple shuttle dialogues, they had joint dialogues, and through that process, they were able to come up with a solution. So later what they did was, it was a limited land, and the land value had gone really up because there was a highway built. So these people, they thought, like, initially they were fighting that both wanted the land, they were stuck in their position, but later they divided the land among the people, the homeless and the people with the certificate, because even the land, they got less land, but the value of the land had gone so high that they felt that if they do it, then at least everyone would have land and they will be able to sustain themselves, do farming, do something. So they were able to come up with a decision that really addressed their need. So this is a very safe process where people come together. It's a genuine interaction and dialogue where they understand each other. When they understand each other, relationships are built and they are ready to have joint actions, and not necessarily solution, but it leads to solution and transformation.
Thank you. Do you want to take a shot at this? Because I know in the context that you are, it's not always a happy ending.
That's actually true. As I mentioned, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao is really relatively new, 2019, and we are operating on a tabula rasa. We can just really, write or draw whatever we want, but ideally, that's the case, but because of the Constitution and the existing laws of the national government, we cannot do that indiscriminately. So what we have in the Bangsamoro Tri-Justice legal system is that the persons involved actually have a choice whether they accept the mediation or the arbitration at the community level, or if they want to elevate it. So it's not the end, even if the community mediation happens at the community courts, because essentially it's the state courts that ultimately either affirms or denies an agreement or the lack thereof at the community level. So not closing the doors to litigation at the state courts level is an option if reparations or restorative justice cannot be had at the community levels. We're trying to mainstream what we have, the MILF, that's a More Islamic Liberation Front Sharia Court, which is a community level court but is not recognized at the state level courts. So we're working on that to be operationalized, and I'm getting inspiration from the case of Timor-Leste and Nepal on Community Mediation Act, so that we can mainstream and so that it becomes acceptable. Otherwise, there will be no end to litigation and no end to conflicts, even if we have the tri-justice system. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other panelists want to jump in on this question? No? Great. Please.
Thank you. My name is Bruno Lencastre. I'm from UNDP Timor-Leste, and I mean part of the answers. You commented already some of part of the question that I was going to make, and it has to do exactly with this connection between traditional justice and formal justice. As Mr. Prosecutor General just mentioned in his intervention, most of the litigation in Timor-Leste is done through the traditional system, and not often we see that some of the decisions, or many of the decisions, are made at the expenses of violations of human rights, especially when it comes to vulnerable groups in the communities like women, children. So these chefs de suco, these local leaders, they tend to make decisions, which of course are accepted by the community, but they are accepted in a way that doesn't comply with human rights, and especially when it comes to women and children. and I wouldn't say 100%, but 90% of the cases, they generate this kind of situation. Of course, formalizing traditional law is not a solution, because traditional law is normally fluid and goes around the law by by definition. And I would like to ask our colleagues from Nepal and from Philippines to see how do they tackle this, and how do you make the connection with these decisions with the formal system? Because in many cases, if you develop a system where you can appeal to the formal system, almost all of the decisions are against the law, especially the ones with women, with children, with inheritances, with the division of land, etc. So how we are also on the state of studying this situation in Timor, and we are analyzing several options. But I would like to, if you could explain how do you solve, or how do you see these situations in your countries, in your experience? Thank you.
I'll take a shot. Yeah, I think we are on the same page, because we are trying to design the tri-justice legal system. This is very unique in the Philippines, because we are the only region that enjoys this tri-justice system in the entire country. So what we did is that through support from the European Union, we have an access to justice manual that developed the Bangsamoro Tri-Justice System legal framework. We had dialogues and consultations with numerous, because we have 13 ethno-linguistic communities in the Bangsamoro as well. And as you mentioned, traditional tribal justice is very fluid, so codifying them was never an option. So what we did was we had dialogues, and then we tried to look at the root causes. Why were they not trusting the institutions? Was there a problem with the courts, the state courts? And what was the motivations of people in going to courts or trying to get in touch with authorities to resolve their disputes? So what we do right now is that we gathered all the judges and the justices in the region. So these are people from the regular civil courts, and the judges and justices from the Sharia courts, which is another avenue for justice provision, and then the community leaders. So we had a dialogue with them to see where we can interlink them. But the problem is there's a the seeming feeling of hierarchy. So the state courts don't feel like they are obliged to acknowledge or recognize whatever the community courts resolve, or the agreements at the community courts, because they are more knowledgeable, learned about the contemporary legal practices and legal frameworks. So what we are trying to do is to link them, develop a manual, develop a module where it is acceptable. Look at the common ground, the common points where they can see that there are acceptable practices that they can recognize and actually enforce at the level of the state courts. But we're still getting there. It's really we just launched the legal framework early this year. So hopefully, and we thank the IDLO for having us here, because we are hearing other experiences from different jurisdictions.
So in Nepal, we took two approaches. First was, as I mentioned earlier, because many traditional systems, it was not working. So, but the traditional mediators were there. So when we trained community mediators, we also included them in this process. And like mediation process itself take care of many things, like power imbalance, giving voice to people. But mediators are also from the same society, and they are also socialized in the same society, so they have their own biases. So to address that, we have specialized special curriculum on gender and human rights. And we trained community mediators on that. And after the training, we also give them the skill to really screen and say, like, if they cannot, like sometimes people come as, I need alimony, but when you keep talking, it becomes like, oh, this is a case of very bad gender-based violence or like discrimination, then it has to be referred to legal system, to police. So we give them skill to understand whether they can take it or not, then refer it to the former justice system, like the police, the court, the shelter homes, legal aid, so that if they want to come again back to mediation, they can make an informed decision. So that was one approach. So the other approach was, in Nepal still there are few indigenous communities who have very, very strong conflict resolution system, and people trust that system. They go there, and for them, we also gave them training on the process, and said that in your process, try to incorporate this. These are the benefits. And we also gave them this gender sensitization training. So this is how we try to work with the traditional system.
Thank you very much. Any other questions right now? Please. Can you also introduce yourself?
My name is Rashid, and I work with UNDP in Papua New Guinea. My question is to Rebecca. You mentioned about the community officers. How different are they compared to the mediators? Are they within the formal system, or they are volunteers? How are they selected? And then what are their roles? Because you also said that they are trying to fill the gap between the communities and the government or administrations, and you also help with conflict resolution. So what would be their specific terms of reference in terms of generally what do they do? How are they selected? Are they on a payroll, part of the government, part of the structure, or completely volunteers? And can we not call them local mediators? If not, why? What? How are their rules different?
Yeah, thank you. I think we could call them local mediators, but community officers was the term that was chosen. I'm not entirely sure why, but obviously there was some work on community officers by some of the same people in Papua New Guinea as well. And it's very flexible, and it varies a lot from place to place, particularly according to the different provinces. So there's a lot of consultation at the provincial level about what that province wants their community officers program to look like. And I think initially they keep records of disputes. Community members can take disputes to them, and it will be talked through. It's a quasi-customary process. They are paid, which I think is really important, because often engagement with customary justice systems becomes part of the neoliberal project to wind back the state, put the obligation on communities, make justice cheaper to deliver. So this raises the question of resourcing. Often people undertaking this work at the community level are doing an enormous amount of labour that costs them as well. So we need to resource it. But they're doing a lot more, and as I said, it varies from place to place, but they are doing a lot more than just resolving disputes. They're operating as a conduit between the national, the provincial, and the village level, which, as you would know from Papua New Guinea, the village level can be really disconnected, with the exception of the church structures. And on the question of just human rights standards, I think this program reminds us that we do, I think most lawyers at least would acknowledge that state justice systems can perpetuate inequalities, but we also tend to assume that customary and informal justice systems have more of these problems. They're more prone to human rights abuses and elite capture and things like that. But we do need to remember that the state justice system often does this. And at least in many contexts in Solomon Islands, people are finding that it's that flexibility of the customary system that actually delivers more of what we would understand to be human rights. So inclusion at the local level, the flexibility of the ways we talk about things might provide more scope for inclusion. So a classic case would be the communities across the country that are moving due to what they say is global heating and relocation, and that's often occurring in the customary realm because of the flexibility that state-based property rights, for example, would not provide more vulnerable people.
Yes, please.
My name is Intana Bupasawan from Association for Development of Women and Legal Education in Laos. I would like to ask my sister from Nepal, from Asia Foundation, a few questions. I would like to know the benefits of the mediation, the mediators. What are the benefits of them, apart from local election or yeah. And the second question is how many percent of the mediation helps to reduce the case sue to the court? Yeah, thank you.
So for the mediators, they are volunteers, but we pay their expense. So earlier, when we used to work with civil society, it used to go through the civil society. But now, since it has become government program, government pay the expense. And when I say expense, it's like transportation and for meals like tea cookies, small amount, not like very much. So they pay per case. It's not like per session. Sometimes in mediation you have to sit for multiple session, but most of the time it gets settled in a day, in 1 or 2 session. So they get paid per session, the expense, but it's a very nominal amount. It's not much. And then the court case. So exactly, we really do not have data on how much caseload it has reduced, but what we have seen is definitely people who have problem in the community, instead of just sitting without addressing and letting it become violent conflict. Now people, when they have problem, they have started accessing and going to mediation program because it's closer to home, it's quick, they know the people, they have trust. So more and more people, they are taking mediation service. And then the assumption is because people are taking service and addressing their problem, the caseload has come down. But what we see is number of cases is not only the indicator of success or transformation. There are so many other factors that is relevant. So we really do not emphasize on counting numbers. But we feel that it has obviously reduced the caseload.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Maybe my question is for Ms. Prita as well. So as we have been discussing, customary and informal justice has been playing a key role to deliver justice in the community. However, in our efforts to promote those customary practices, sometimes unintentionally we anxiotize them with our policy, procedures, and documentation things. Sometimes this disrupt the, organically developed mechanism which has been delivering justice for centuries. So my question is, how can we strike the balance, between respecting and preserving these existing practices and also meeting the accountability requirements and also ensuring positive impacts for the community?
So Rebecca answered that question earlier. So, yes, we generally, the narrative that we hear when we hear about customary justice or community justice programs are, oh, they emphasis on harmony at the cost of justice, and it is like elite captured, there are like only male and powerful are able to become mediators, but it is true in the formal system also the same, and it has its own biases. But this system is it is more accountable because the community are there. Community are always watching them, and it's not like you court, you give the decision and then you forget about it. Like if you go and get resolution in the community justice system, then the people, when you go to the market, they will meet and say, oh, what's happening? If they see that mediators are being biased, they'll stop going to them. So there is this control mechanism within the community. And yes, we have to give them trainings because sometimes it's, it's implicit bias, right? So you have to give them trainings, you have to give them training on basic process that is fair, that is more participatory, that like really respects the dignity of people. That training is very, very important. And when you do that, then like the community themselves will check and balance. And then in a mediation, it is no one is forcing you to make that decision. It is your own decision. So you will implement that, right? So it is about, so I feel that because the process is flexible, it is adaptive to the needs, and it is people who sit and we encourage mediators to come together and do practice sharing. And that is also like a modular training for them, learning from their own experience. So if you put this kind of practices, then I think the system will take control of it, and it will check and balance. Rebecca, you may.
Dr. Lopez, you're getting a lot of input now. You're thinking about the law and how it's going. I'm just really curious. Does this reflect what you think is going to happen? Is there going to be this mechanism based on what you already are doing, all of the different ways you are providing support to these institutions already? Is this the direction you're hoping to go? Is closer to what's happening in Nepal, or are you thinking something more formalized in Timor-Leste?
Timor-Leste mostrou se país que é jovem e mostrou pós-conflito. Então, durante a ocupação, nela ia justiça formal. Ia a justiça informal tradicional, e a mim se conhece essa nahibiti, nahibiti, termos que utiliza, e contrabando é tarabando. Da maneira que a saída ia hoje a kuliah sita ia hoje katak Asian Foundation halo pesquisa em 2013 nessa era comunidade ia nem lá os compreensível, mas era levanta katak ia vantagem e desvantagem. E a vantagem é que a justiça informal, tradicional, na lei liu, depois econômico liu, e basic basira, justiça basic ba é uma comunidade, né? Só que desvantagem makida né, desvantagem se era só o senhor Bruno mas levanta ida né, kata que né em termos de imparcialidade. How experiência né, how quando procurador, né, os mediador tá tendo né. Ele o sistema Europa continental. Timor-Leste influencia o Europa continental, Portugal, Itália, França quase nessa. Também só que nene o kuliah kata itania tribunal desde o início procuramos reconhecer quando a justiça informal parte sira, tanto a vítima, né, vítima sira ou suspect, né, sira halona reconciliava malu, sira simu malu, e tudo a minha costume baluk sira fo fahi rumah, fo tais, né, né, ho base né, loriba tribunal reconhece né, mecanismo né, e tribunal mas nem bele hakaman, ou em circunstância atenuante né, a base do artigo 55 número 2, nem bele hakaman. Só que mais parte ainda quando criminaliza domestic violence, violação baseada em gênero, né, a minha lei, né, la vele arquiva, la vele taca caso, né. Só reconhecer de tamanho maka a lei quando a justiça tradicional agora é né a minha legislador, o parlamento, né a minha coordenador reforma justiça né talvez está futuramente o senhor ministro da justiça kata importância e deve lei justiça informal é importante né tamanho moro se apoio nelet precisa a estrutura e a organização, depois tem que a mediador, certa informação. E mas eu conta a experiência rásica. Ao nudar procurador já o distrito, né? Né, o capital e momento am acusa e loriba tribunal, mas se fez cuida. Se fiz cuida né, a comunidade nemos be ia problema né, problema que kuang ne ser lori ba se fiz cu. Então se fiz cu liu se be ida reconciliar-se justiça tradicional né, nia la razão também dia imparcial. Então, caso mais estamos ao cair e vamos ver cair, pois é mané se suku né é uma veterano, né? É uma veterano e família, né? Família né é uma ulu que é uma guerrilheiro e a ilarang, né? E só que a minha saída quando ia procurador cair, quando ia ligação família, conhece dia, então nela bele cair caso né. Então tem que procurar selo uma cair. Só que também ida oimbe se fiz com nia halom mediação, só que nia da justo nia benefício ma parte selo. Então né a minha lei né sam abuso de poder. Poder of abuso de poder. Então a minha julgata ida se fiz com e caso né lá e haula bele cair também né hau é uma procurador silo haula vai envolver. Só que está só em experiência Nepal ni está a mim precisa aprender né futuramente também ida vantagem iya. Só que precisa ida formalizar, tem que a minha base legal, depois tem que mediador, sira, treinamento, formação. Pois lei ne limita katanya quando artigo ira tem limita katanya tem que ir ya imparcial. Ne tem que ir autonomia financeira patrimonial. Para ne la bele halo desconfiança ba emma be parte sira. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Folks, we did start a little bit late, but it's also lunchtime. Can I just ask one last question, and then we'll head out, and I'm sure Ukrit will go really fast on this. But we had one question, which is, I think, really important in the current context of where we're going with technology, which is, Ukrit, if you can just explain a little bit what kinds of data and practical tools can enable governments and development partners and civil society and everyone else to better identify and engage with diverse pathways to people-centered justice. Are there any examples of data collection and data sharing initiatives here in Thailand that might be illuminating? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would say that in Thailand, we also have the problem, like many countries experience, the quality of the mediators. And we think that the voice of the victims or offenders participate in the restorative justice process, like mediation or alternative conference, something like that. They voice a lot about the quality of the mediator and the facilitator in the program. And sorry, I think that we do have some design thinking about this as well. We run a workshop with many mediators in Thailand, and the prosecutor, the police who has the role to mediate the case in their own authority as well. And they think that we need to have a specific platform in order to cross-check the quality of the mediator. Here comes the process of developing our web-based platform for practitioners in restorative justice system, run by Thailand Institute of Justice with cooperation with the UNODC and Thammasat University. So what we do, we try to get some lesson learned from what we have as a user-friendly platform in our daily life, like delivery rider, like Grab, Lineman, something like that, so that we can track if the rider comes to me, and then I can track if the rider bring the object, bring the food, bring the other things, and they are during the way, and then after that, I can rate them like 5 stars, 4 stars, something like that. We can make our photo uploaded and then show that the food is not in a good condition or something like that, right? So we think the same way in the way that we develop our platform. When we initiate I try not to spend too much time, but when we initiate the platform, we use this like user-friendly UX and UI's development in order to satisfy the victims and the offender, both of the parties in the conflict. They have this platform. They enter into the platform, key in the national IDs, and then we have the facilitator somewhere around there show up on the map. If they want to use this facilitator, the facilitator after their names, there will be stars after that. That shows that this facilitator is good or bad, something like that. And then the facilitator has the authority to create the case in the platform, and then they start making arrangement, making appointment. The conference, it may be online conference as well, because we developed this platform during COVID-19. And then after meeting together, they create the document, the restorative outcome that they want, like agreement that the offender will pay something, will do something, will not do something. The victim can have the right to check if the offender did it in a proper way or not. They just took photo 2 or 3 times and then upload that, and it's a fake photo or something like that, so they can comment on this. Because like if they have to pay something or do something to the victim can have the right to say if he or she is satisfied with the action or not. And then we do the 360 degrees, like the circle evaluation. So the offenders can rate the victim if they are too like picky, too demanding or something like that, and and the victim can rate the offenders, and the facilitator can rate both of the parties as well. So this is the way that we develop this, but it is in a beta, in initial phase. We haven't launched to the public, but we have some of the parties that involved in the like Department of Juvenile Justice in Thailand, Department of Probation, Department of Human Rights to voluntarily participate in this initial phase of our project. So it quite one of the innovative idea to like increase quality of the facilitator that we have.
Thank you so much. You guys can see why I wanted to get that on the record, because that's so fascinating. I'm not going to have a closing statement because it's lunchtime, but it's been a real pleasure. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you so much. It's been so interesting. Thank you for all the questions, and see you guys downstairs for food. Thank you.